This is my tier list for jungle champions played in the top lane. I'm ranking the top 25 most picked junglers this patch. So if you don't see your champion, they just weren't picked that much, but drop a comment and I'll rank them. The tiers go from Despair, spoiler alert, that's Evelynn, all the way up to Secret Weapon. Despair means they should have no success at all in top lane. You probably aren't using much of their kit at all. Evelynn, for example, she wants to be perma roaming, she wants to be ganking, she wants to be stealthed a lot. And if you're sitting in top lane, you're not really doing that. There are other reasons to be in despair, but I think Evelynn is the best example of that. Secret Weapon is one particular champ that always tops the win rates for top lane, has an even better win rate in top lane than jungle, surprisingly, although his pick rate is pretty low. I just think he embodies everything good about top lane, so we'll get to him later. Uh, I think there's a few obvious differences and a few less obvious differences about jungle and top. The obvious ones are if you're in jungle, you have to choose where am I ganking next? Do I want to power farm? Do I want to prioritize Drakes? Do I want to be ganking nonstop? And I don't care if I fall behind in levels. In top lane, most of your choices are how much pressure do I want to exert? And that's about it. Like, where do I want the lane? Can I pull off a proxy? On occasion, can I roam here? But mostly you're just stuck in top. So kits, some are suited for both. Most kits are suited either very well for jungle or very well for top, and not both. Smaller differences are things like typically the top laner is going to have more gold and be up in levels compared to jungle. That's not always the case. It depends somewhat on champion, but in general, you're going to have more gold there. Karthus, for example, should have a lot more gold in top lane than he should in jungle. So even though he's pretty good at jungle, he can clear super quickly. His W, considering it's his only CC and he has no mobility, his W sets up really good ganks. So Karthus is going to be the first champ I drop here. I think he could be meta. At times, he has been very, very close to meta. I've played more of him top than I have jungle, but he's just not quite there. He's still not a common pick top, but he's strong enough for that. His ult does a ton of damage, even if you're not with your team. If it's late game, you can take off like 40% of an AD carry support squishy mid laner health bar. He's pretty great. You should be grouping anyway, but I think his ult alone makes him so powerful that having additional golden levels as a top laner makes up for losing what he's able to do from the jungle position. Next, Maokai, already meta. This one's self-explanatory. You see Maokai top a lot. He might be primarily a jungler and then a support, but it's totally normal to pick him top. He's got everything a top laner needs. He's got CC, he's got tankiness. He can do some damage, although he's kind of lacking in that department, but he's also got great sustain. So he's a pretty good, well-rounded top lane, and he's just been a staple of top since like season 3 or so. Diana, she's going to be in the could be meta tier for me. You can totally lane her. You can take her mid. She's mostly a jungler. She's okay in mid. She's not great in top, but she can do it. I think because she's an assassin, that's part of why she's not great top. A lot of assassins don't really succeed in top because you tend to be up against a bruiser who's got CC and damage, so you don't usually get to one-shot your opponents in top. Also, you can't roam towards mid, or you can't roam towards bot as easily if you're top lane. You're just missing some opportunities that Diana has in jungle and mid and doesn't have in top. Nocturn is going to be pretty much exactly like Diana. He's best in jungle. When he can lane, I like seeing him in mid more than top. But one thing he does better than Diana is he is more of a bruiser. He's got more sustain. Like, Diana's really good in all ins. Nocturn, he can stick around for a while. He can hang. He's got a lot of the things that make a good top laner. He's just not on the level of meta top laners. Jarvan is going to top this could be meta tier for now. At many times, he has been a top laner. I think about Ray on Cloud9, he was a monster on Jarvan, but that was like 6 years ago now or something. So Jarvan top hasn't been meta for a long time. but I always feel like he's just one tweak away from being a good top laner. The problem is he's got so much power in ganking that they can't really increase his stats, or else he would just run everybody over in the jungle. So because he's so good at jungling, they can't make him too strong in the top lane. Viego's gonna go in the maybe tier. I know when he first came out, he was great in lane, but that really fell away. He he really needs to be all over the map, and having him stuck in top lane is just not good enough. And since they've nerfed his healing again and again, he doesn't really have the sustain to stay up in top lane, considering how much damage he's gonna take since he doesn't have much range. Lee Sin's also gonna be in maybe. I'll put him just above Viego. For very brief periods, he has been a meta top laner. I mean, like a patch here, a patch there. And I'll put Graves here as well because I think they're similar. Like, there are some patches where you're going to see guys like Fudge play these guys top, but it hasn't happened for a while. And I think they just barely sneak in there and they're barely viable. And then they get nerfed by like -2 AD because their jungle clears too fast or something like that. And then that small nerf brings them back down to normal in jungle and below average in top lane. I think they just have too many bad matchups. So unless they're on a super good patch, they're not great. Again, you can make anything work. There was that weird month where Janna, Smite, Perma Roam top was a thing. There's that guy who got to like Grandmaster or so on Yumi who would drop a PowerPoint before every game. You can make anything work. I just think that for the average player, you're going to have a lot more success sticking to the could be meta and up champions, and these maybe and despair champions probably shouldn't be played top. They should be played in a different lane or not at all, or you can be some crazy one trick, but in general, the higher up champs make more sense for top. Lilia for me is going to be a could be meta champ. She's pretty strong. She's got great team fighting. Having additional gold on her makes a huge difference because in jungle, a lot of the times you are just down in items and you don't have that damage to get the work done. You look at somebody like Maokai, and Maokai, when he falls behind, he's still pretty useful. Versus Lilia, if you fall behind, you don't do much. You barely do damage. You die really quickly. Your only goal is to get as many people to sleep as possible. So I actually think that she can have a lot of success in the top lane. You might be down in kills, but you can still easily be up in gold and up in the levels. She's got obvious weaknesses. She's going to lose lane a lot of the time. When you get ganked as Lilia, that's a problem. You die pretty easily. But I think she's fun and she can have success in the top lane pretty easily. Poppy for me, she's already meta. She's a great top lane. Similarly to Maokai, you can fall behind and still be useful. You can peel your AD carry really well. She's got decent lane matchups. If you get Divine Sunderer, typically lane goes fine and you shouldn't really be dying on her. Fiddlesticks, he definitely goes and could be meta. I'm going to put him right behind Karthus. He's got a lot of sustain. He has fantastic team fights. I think sometimes when you pick Fiddlesticks top, you're just leaving your team missing something. Like if you don't have solid tank or a lot of CC from either your support or your jungler or someone else, you're just not going to have a lot of success. So Fiddlesticks is pretty composition dependent, but you can definitely succeed in top with him. I think lane is good. I think team fighting is good. It just depends on, is your team not drowning without you? Brier is going to go also and could be meta. And she is only here because I truly believe that she's a busted champ. I think her numbers are just too high. Her damage is too high. And we still have people first timing her. She's still relatively new. And yet her win rate is crazy. And once people figure out how to not suicide with her, she's pretty strong. Silas is already meta, but he's going to go at the bottom here because I still think he's better in jungle and mid than he is in top lane. Yeah, people play him top lane, but just being stuck on that island, having access to fewer ults, not being able to roam bot and help your bot lane or pick up kills there, you're just less able to impact the map from top lane. So while he is meta, while he is normal, and nobody's going to blink if you pick him, I'm going to put him at the bottom of these champs. Kane goes in maybe. I see him top. I guess, like, yeah, you're going to get your red form really soon, 9 out of 10 games, because you're stuck up there with a melee champ, usually. So, yes, you get your orbs quickly, but you're not using like half of his kit. All of his mobility is kind of wasted on you. It's good for escaping, maybe. If you get ganked, you can run into a wall and get away. But you're just getting a lot less value out of it. I think you're leaving a lot on the table. And I don't think he's great. Ekko. Ekko's almost identical to Diana for me. He's going to be great in jungle. He's going to be good in mid. He's not going to be great in top. And it's that assassin issue. If you're up against a bruiser and you're an assassin, you're going to have a tough time. It's probably not going to pan out into you getting kills early, which means you're not going to be able to pop bruisers later. And it's harder for you to roam and impact the rest of the map when you're stuck in top. So somebody like Diana or Ekko, in the jungle, they can gank whoever they want. They can get kills like that in a 2v1 situation or 3v2, or they can counter jungle or whatever. But if you're just stuck in top lane, you might not get kills early, you might not snowball, you might not be able to have that fantastic late game where you assassinate people. All right, on to my favorite. Zac is the secret weapon. I'm pretty sure that's also his champion title. But I think that that's a valid description for how he is in top lane because he is incredibly strong. On a bad game, he's like Malphite. He's fairly reliable CC. He's moderately tanky. But here's where he beats Malphite. He will never run out of mana. He has amazing sustain. The lower you get, the more you heal. Well, the lower you get, the less the less your skills cost, and your blobs still heal the same amount. So you heal more when you're lower. He has incredible sustain. He's not mana hungry. I think he gets tankier than Malphite. He's got more CC, although it's slightly less reliable. The only place he's losing to Malphite is in burst damage. But I think Zac is a perfect all-around great champ top. I think he fills the role that like 95% of team comps need. I usually enjoy having an AP top. I play AP tops a lot because these days everybody loves playing AD mids. There's Yasuo, Yone, Zed, Talon, Kiana, others, and it feels like anytime an AD mid becomes meta, they never ever fall out of the meta. There has not been a single time in the past, what was Yasuo, season 3, in the past decade, that Yasuo has not been one of the top picked champs. Zed has been one of the top picked champs for, it seems like, forever. Maybe a patch here and there that he wasn't in the top, but in general, he's up there. He's fantastic. He can do it all. Vi for me is also going to be could be meta, and I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen her in the meta at any point. She seems like she could do it. I think she's pretty similar to Jarvan. She's got a ton of damage. She's got good CC. Her shields are pretty reliable for blocking damage when you need to. She doesn't have a ton of bad matchups. You can build her in a bunch of different ways. You can build her very tank heavy. You can build her lethality. You can even do some like on hit type builds where you do a ton of damage. I think that she's flexible. She slots into a lot of comps. You can play her as a side laner or you can play her as a backline team fighter. I love this champ. I've played so much of her top and I am just so surprised that on those strong patches for her, she's not meta. I think she's a little bit weak right now because she got so much attention in pro play for a while, and like 2 months ago they nerfed her a ton. So she's not super solid stat wise, but I think she's a really good champ. Nidalee is going to be despair for me. She beats Evelynn, as everybody will, but I just don't think that there's an effective build for Nidalee top. You could go AP, you could go Bruiser. I definitely don't think you should go AD Nidalee. It's not season 3 anymore. I think Nidalee has to be played a very specific way, and that involves being in the jungle. And I wouldn't put her in anything above despair. Hecm for me, he'll go here. He could be meta. That seems to be the case for Hecm at pretty much all times. He's usually a decent pick. I know you're losing the part of your kit where you zoom around the map. Like that move speed's not great unless you're setting up a gank or going for a dive or something. So you lose that, but he's been played top now and then in pro play. And again, it's patch dependent. So he hasn't been in the meta for a while. I just think that he's like Jarvan, just like one tweak away from being a top laner again, or jungle top flex pick. Belth is going to go at the bottom of the maybe tier. She would go in despair, except that she's really not that much about her lavender passive. I know people think, oh, she's an infinite scaler. You got to get as many lavender stacks as you can so that you can attack 6 times per second late game. But Riot has shown that she's actually really strong early game. She has a fantastic win rate even before she gets stacked up. So with all that early game power, she does fine without the lavender stacks. I don't think she should be played in top, but she can be. Recently, they've moved some of her power from early game to mid and late. So a previous incarnation of Belth, she might have been higher in the maybe tier. She would never be, could be meta for me. Yi is going to go... He's going to go in the maybe tier. I want to put him in despair, and here's why. I think Yi has almost no good matchups top. Yi, like these champions, is basically an assassin. I know that he can shred the entire team, but I think that in 1v1s early, he's just going to lose to almost everybody because he doesn't have enough damage to shred bruisers and he doesn't have enough sustain to survive bruisers. I think he just gets run down a lot, and without somebody helping him, he's going to lose almost every single matchup. He doesn't go in despair because he has a lot of the good things that the top laners need. Like he does have damage, and his late game is going to be really solid. And if you're up in items, that's a good thing. But I just think that all of his matchups are so bad, and he's lacking CC, so I'm gonna put him pretty low. Shaco is also going to go in the maybe tier. He's going to go higher. He's got flexibility in builds, which is important. You know, you can go AD, you can go lethality, you can go bruiser, or you can go AP. I don't know what's best. I don't think any of it's particularly good. And I don't think the average player is good enough with Shaco to make it work. Like, you're not Pink Ward. It's probably not going to work for you. Khazix is going to be in the despair tier. All of his weaknesses are amplified in top lane. In jungle, it's the assassin thing, except you don't have the good things about these champs. Like, he's not going to do well in lane if you freeze on him. He's not going to do well in 1v1s or 2v2s. I think unless you're hyper focusing on ganking your top Khazix, your Khazix is going to fall behind 9 out of 10 times, and then he's not going to be useful later. There are a whole bunch of champions that do poorly into bruisers, and they're the ones down here. It's not because they can't lane, although for a lot of them they can't lane. It's not only because they can't lane, it's also because they are going to hate every single matchup they're in. Khazix was a laner maybe in like season 3 or 4. I remember high playing him mid for Cloud9, but it's been a long, long time since those days, and his power is so much better suited for ganking and counter jungling and all the other things that junglers do. Talia's going to go in despair. She's a fine mid laner, which at least puts her above these 3, but she's got a ton of flaws that are going to be exposed when she goes top lane. She's not able to survive very well in a long lane. She's too gankable. She doesn't really have the sustained DPS to take down a lot of her matchups. I think once a standard top laner gets on her, and I'm thinking like Set, Garen, Darius, 10 others, she's just going to die like almost all the time. She is really well suited for mid lane and jungle, where she can use her ultimate to access the entire map. When she is stuck in top, she just doesn't do that well. So that's the top 25 most picked junglers. If you have any questions or if you disagree with me, feel free, because this is my opinion and I don't expect people to agree with every single thing I said. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you.